welcome to Two Dudes Talking Movies podcast. I'm Luke.
I'm Griffin.
And we are back with our final episode for our Halloween October spooky time month shenanigans.
Yippee.
As per usual, for every single end of our shenanigans, we have the one, the only, Drew Britton, back again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys. I'm really excited. This is definitely the most intense film of the three that I've done thus far. So yeah, I'm really excited to get your guys' perspective and just talk all things Martyrs and French horror and your French extremity, all that stuff.
I think extreme is an understatement.
Extreme is an understatement of the century.
Yeah, so I want to hear from you guys, like off the bat, like what your perceptions were, what your thoughts are, just like go for it.
Before we even get to that, I want to know like why you chose it, but then also a little bit about what you do for those that may not know.
Oh, right. Yeah, so I am a professor in the School of Communication and Journalism. I work specifically in the TVP department, but also teaching a lot of comm studies courses, specifically like film studies courses. I have a class called Film Communication, and then another class called The Branches of Horror, which I did show this film for New French Extremity Week. And then, to your other question, I picked this because it's just a great film to really discuss. I think it has a lot to say, and it's tackling a lot of really heady and existential questions. And it's doing it in a very unique fashion. And I'm just really fascinated also by the kind of movement that this film is a part of, which I've alluded to, which is called New French Extremity, which we'll talk about all that stuff, of course. So, yeah.
Griffin, I want to start with you. I want to know what you thought, because you and I had a lengthy text conversation about
Even a phone call.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Oh, it even bled over to actually hearing the voice. All right. So yeah, Griffin, go for it. I'd love to hear what your kind of perception is.
So kind of off the bat, definitely a very extreme film, like, which is an understatement, I know, but yeah, kind of like the thrill of it all and just like how intense it really got. And it's just like, and especially like during the third act, it was like it got like very, very like grim and dark, like not like the other parts of the film weren't, but but once you got towards the end, it got really like extreme and just like with the whole and like the acting,
Yeah.
kind of set up really well.
So kind of question I wanted to ask you, and Luke, you too, is like, so with how extreme this is, do you think there's any, like, what purpose do you think, if any, like that kind of brutality serves, especially for maybe like what the film is talking about? Or to you, did it feel more like senseless? Because a lot of what this kind of movement is doing is, it's not so much, they are often described as not necessarily violent films, but movies about violence. And I think it's really interesting to talk about how that violence is like inflicted upon like our protagonists. But yeah, Luke, what do you think? Yeah.
Well, so I sit down, right? I watch the movie, and something with all of these movies is that I never know what I'm getting into, and that's kind of why I like this month, is because I'm just forced to watch this for however long it is.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I get done, and the only thought I have is what the actual because I have no idea what I just got done watching, right? So I have to like stop, think about it. And I don't think it's necessarily like senseless gore or violence or anything like that. Like it has a reason to be here. There are parts of this movie that I think are senseless. They're not gore related, and we can get into that later because I've never liked a movie. I do like this movie, I want to preface, but yeah, it's insane. And
It's very intense.
So, I'm sure your listeners are going to be wondering, like, so what is insane about it to you, right? Because like there's so many violent films. Like we have American films that are quite violent, right? But obviously, pun intended, this is speaking in a much different language, right? And I think it's going about its violence and what it's saying about its violence in a very different way. So I'm just really curious to see what your guys' kind of perspective on like how the violence is depicted and why you're like, oh my god, this is so intense, and like what is it about it that makes it difficult to, I don't know if you found it difficult to watch, but by most people's standards it's a difficult watch, so to speak, which a lot of these films in this kind of New French Extremity canon are.
Yeah, for me, along the lines of being a hard watch, I think this is the only movie that I genuinely felt somewhat sick. Yeah, like I wasn't at the point of like throwing up, but like I felt that churning in my stomach. I was like, this is and it's a good feeling that I felt that, because like if I'm moved by a movie to feel something like that, it did a good job. Yeah.
Right.
So I'm on board with that. But I think what makes it so insane is just like how real it all feels and tangible everything is, because we're kind of dancing around the plot, so I got to recap this a bit. But Lucy is the main, well, one of the main characters, right?
It's Anna and Lucy.
Yes. And both are former abuse victims. And it's not like sexual abuse or anything. It's just pure physical, mental, emotional abuse to the highest degree possible. And Lucy ends up tracking down the family that had abused her when she was younger and just absolutely massacres them with a shotgun.
Yep.
Crazy, crazy sequence. Insanely gruesome. I'm surprised most of that gore is on screen for that. But yeah, and then like I don't want to spoil too much either, but we've said it before, and it's kind of hard not to like spoil this movie to get at why it is.
Yeah, it's pretty common knowledge amongst like just like cinephiles, like what exactly is going on, because it's so much more than just the idea of like, oh, we're torturing people for the sake of just like being cruel and abusive, right? Like there's a very, very like heady, like existential. I didn't know if you wanted to get into that, like, and talk. I mean, you kind of can't talk about the film unless you talk about like Mademoiselle and like why they're doing this, right? And yeah, I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, all of the abuse basically toils down to this shady French group, cult, whatever you want to call them,
The elites.
Yeah, trying to create a martyr by basically pushing them to the brink of death through extreme abuse, to where they go and like glimpse into the beyond and see what life after death looks like, to then relay it and then share with the group.
All right. And
I don't want to get too much into that just yet, because my deep thought revolves pretty heavily around that. So I'm going to save that for later.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like with regards to the violence, it's not like it's not like action movie violence. It's not like Mission Impossible where it's just like pew 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 and you're dead. It's like very real. It's abuse, like Luke said. It's like to the highest degree. It's like these two young girls are like they're tortured physically and like to achieve some later goal, which we'll allude on later. And like especially in like the last 30 minutes of the film, like you can see like the violence is very heavily portrayed, and it's like it just feels very real. I had to pause the movie a lot during like a lot just to kind of be like, what am I watching?
Yeah, specifically I think what we're referring to is that basically once Anna becomes captive, because there are basically three like very hard act breaks. Like the act breaks are very definitive, like and I'm sure we'll get into it. But at 1 hour and 8 minutes is basically when Anna's captivity starts, and when she's like put in the chair and her like abuse starts. And it is so punishing because it is so visceral, and it's not torture in the sake of like how it's often Americanized, right? Where it can be like, I don't want to say torture is entertaining, but for the sake of like an entertaining story, it's often implemented. Whereas this, it's just supposed to be brutal and visceral, and you're supposed to just sit with it, right? And even I made a note how like when Anna's being abused, like it's like this very melancholic like piano and acoustic music, and it's absolutely transcended horror at that point. And I don't even think the film's playing with genre at that point. It's just operating on a completely different level. And you're talking about how it's like I don't even know if it's necessarily gory, but it's just so difficult to watch considering what these people are going through, like emotionally speaking, which then obviously devolves into just like physical pain as well. But the most disturbing, like haunting thing in the entire film, and probably in the top 5 like most haunting things I've seen in a movie, is both when Mademoiselle is talking about it as well as when Anna first walks down the hallway and you see all the victims from the past, like over the course of history, right? And you see that moment where supposedly they've reached martyrdom. And it's so haunting because you get these like beautiful close-ups, and yeah, it's just really, really painful to watch. Also because it brings up the questions that we often don't want to think about, and which I think horror is really great at doing, and what these films are really great at doing is thinking about the concept of death and what death entails, like what our death is going to be like, as well as like what is on the other side. And, you know, as much of a villain as Mademoiselle is, as well as this like kind of elite society, like you can empathize with with what they want to find out, but not necessarily the way that they're going about doing it. But we all have those same questions, right? It's just, they have the privilege to do so through the means of like money and power, right? And that dives into a whole like other realm of like politics that you could really get into if you wanted to, right? But yeah, the people in power get to make these kinds of decisions, and who are the people that suffer as a result of it are people like Anna and Lucy, and so that bears so much weight in of itself too. But just even on the most like fundamental level of like what happens, like what does it take to reach this thing that they're trying to achieve? I think it's very heady, and I can absolutely understand like why people don't want to watch this kind of stuff. And personally, I love this because it makes me think about those things, and I like having these kinds of discussions. But when someone's like, yeah, I'm not gonna, or it's just like, yeah, I watched it and I never want to even think about it again, I totally understand that, because it's not a headspace we enjoy being in. I don't know if I enjoy being in it, but I'm very fascinated by it. So I guess I enjoy it in the sense of like getting to dissect it, right? Because this is like technically probably the 6th time I've seen it, but they're all for, it's never been like, oh, I'm gonna sit down and just like kick back and watch Martyrs. It's always for the sake of like research and really like diving into it, whether it's for a podcast or showing it to somebody who has the same sensibilities. I'm just like, I really want to see like what you think of it, and like let's have this discussion under.
Man,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would like to take something back that I had said last episode, where it was a Tubi movie. I wasn't expecting much. I want to rechange that to where if it's a Tubi movie, I'm expecting nothing, because this movie is like actually really well crafted.
Right.
And that was something that I kind of ragged on American Mary for, where like I didn't care for a lot of parts of it.
Tubi is just like, that's all just licensing and streaming. So it's
Yeah.
basically whatever they can, like they have some excellent movies. So it's just a means of like whatever those licensors can get their hands on, that either might be for a cheap buck, and it doesn't have anything to do with the quality of the movie. It's just purely like, what are the licensing rights? And like sometimes movies are just like, they just don't cost that much to license. And yeah, this movie's almost 20 years old. It's a French film, right? There just probably isn't a huge American demand for it. So yeah, they can license it for pretty cheap. So yeah, that's why
My spruce brain was not thinking of any of those things when I spoke last week. But yeah, like you mentioned the close-ups, right, of the previous Martyrs in history as we go. Like the cinematography in this is crazy good, because the closer you get on things, the more grossed out I feel, because I have to like visibly stare at the details because they're all right there. You can't afford to look away. And this is especially true with the lighting. This is something I mentioned during Weapons as well, where the concept of a dark hallway with nothing actually there, and I know there's nothing there, but the shadows still freak me out, is like a primal fear. I don't know if that's because when I was 4, I was scared of the basement, or like what that was, but like seeing that again here, and then knowing that there is actually something going on in those dark places, whether it be the literal basement of this house or things that Lucy sees in her mind, is just incredible.
Yeah.
It's like, the cinematography is like very immersive. Like there's a lot of close-ups of like the victims, and like a lot of just a lot of like following shots, like as Lucy and Anna like traverse throughout the house, and just it gets you very immersed, and like you can kind of relate to them in a way too, because it's just like you feel like you're there with them.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah, it's captured a lot through like a lot of this handheld camera work as well. So it gives there's just like so much juxtaposing tone throughout the film in terms of how it's captured. Like, right off the bat, we think that this family is going to be this protagonist, and it's captured in a lot of like handheld running throughout the house when the brother's chasing the sister, right? Which also lends itself to kind of like these very definitive act breaks, but leading us to believe like the family is going to be like, so, oh, we're learning about this family, and the son is swimming, and they're talking about how the drain is clogged, right? And then they just get blown away like right off the bat, and it's just. I think it's certainly setting up your expectations for like, oh yeah, any expectations you have, and you kind of like need to throw those out the window, because while it might be horror, like I think it's a lot. I don't even want to say a lot more than that. It's just it's just operating on a very different level. Like even the scarred lady, if we want to call her, which is essentially Lucy's like manifestation of her guilt for not having saved this woman when she was younger. yeah, it's brutal what she's doing to herself, which is technically is Lucy abusing herself, right? But it's just so emotional, right? It's not the fact that it's like, oh, it's a spirit or a succubus that's attacking. It's like, no, it's like all this guilt that is built up over years and years, right? And you just can't, she just can't contend with that anymore. Um, yeah, it's so I kind of wanted to ask, like, are you guys familiar at all with kind of like the movement that this was like a part of, like the new French extremity movement? Because this is certainly the most popular film amongst like that canon of films.
I've heard of the movement, but I don't know much about it.
Well, let's talk.
Yeah, I'd also heard of it. I don't know a whole lot either. So
Um, so yeah, so just I think a little bit of background for especially a film like this is really important just because we need to know like what that's what we always wonder, especially when watching a film like this, is like what were they thinking? Like what was going on with the creators, right? So as we all know, like a film movement is essentially like a collection of films that usually and often aren't people getting together and like creating this manifesto. It just happens to be a number of filmmakers with the same sensibilities that are usually upset about the same thing or want to talk about the same thing at the same time. So it all just kind of culminates in this kind of perfect, beautiful storm. So these films start to come out, and critics and film scholars, they start to notice a pattern, and then somebody like usually ascribes a term to it. And so that's how this happened, right? So it was coined by, I was going to read something where it says New French Extremity. It was coined by critic James Quant. And it was more so used as like a pejorative term to start to describe these films and just their viscerality and how disgusting some people found. So his quote is pretty fascinating. He says, "Cinema suddenly determined to break every taboo, to wade in rivers of viscera and spumes of sperm, to fill each frame with flesh, nubile or gnarled, and subject it to penetration, mutilation, and defilement." And so that's kind of what you're getting into. But having said that, right, I think looking at all the background, to know that it's not just for the sake of just the things he described. Because, yeah, he had to use it as a pejorative term and that he wasn't in support of it, right? But this film movement basically started from the late 90s into the late aughts. And there was just a lot of turbulence that was going on in France at the time. And especially with their cinema, it was often considered to be very banal, plain. And even Catherine Breillat, who directed two really great films that are part of this movement, one's called Fat Girl and the other one's called Romance, she said, and I quote, "French cinema is terribly burgos. You're either an artist or a conformist. If you're a conformist, you show society conforming to the way it likes to see itself. If you're an artist, you show a society that's much more transgressive." So you started getting these filmmakers who were just really kind of bored by what was coming out of like French cinema, as well as what was going on with like the politics at the time, right? So like one of the things was, where's that quote? Oh yeah, so can't find where my note was, but I wanted
You
to.
do have a lot of notes there. They're all like
Yes.
printed out.
Oh, right.
Rev and I just use our phones.
Yeah.
and
So there
use
was
it.
a riot in 2005. It was regarding the discontent youth of North African heritage and policing of immigrant neighborhoods. And so their Minister of the Interior at the time, Nicolas Sarkozy, was very frowned upon, and he was not very well liked. And so one of the things he had said when he was visiting these suburbs was he described them as gangrene and that they should be cleaned with a power hose, right?
Yikes.
So yeah, he was not very much favored. So again, you have this perfect storm of kind of just what is considered boring cinema amongst a lot of these filmmakers, in conjunction with the politics of the time. And then this is essentially how we get this movement, right? And yeah, like I was saying, Martyrs is certainly the most popular of these, but there's a number of films that are playing with this kind of level of violence. And what I think is so fascinating about this movement and Martyrs, is the fact that none of it is ever supernatural. It's all just like humans and what they do to one another.
Yes. As this bothered me to no end with weapons. It all just like magically is like, oh, it's this mystic person. And that bothers me, like, because everything in weapons up until that point is like visceral and like just really real and grounded.
Yeah.
And I'm with it for that.
Huh.
And then it randomly switches up. And like this one, you kind of play around with some of that because like you have that like psychological aspect of Lucy seeing things, but it's still very grounded, and
it's still
appreciate that.
Yeah, and that's still all psychological, right? Like that's still very much grounded, right? Because those things do exist, right? Sorry.
No, you're fine. But yeah, like Lucy, like obviously, like she's seeing things. She's seeing the uh, demon lady, I guess. The Scarlet Lady.
Yeah. I don't know what to
Like, yeah, she's still like very psychological, but it's still like it's still real. Like obviously, like in reality, someone could be imagining like the Scarlet Lady chasing after them. That was like a representation of their guilt, but like yeah, even if it is like psychological.
So do you often not like that when you have this kind of change in like the reality of the film, right? So as I kind of refer to it in like a lot of the film classes I teach, I call it the occupied reality. It's like, what is the reality of the world we're living in? So like our reality as we know, and kind of how a lot of these films are depicted in this movie is grounded, right? It's no different than the reality that we live in, right? We all abide by the same rules and principles. And so when a film does that, in which Weapons does, and then it changes up on you. So you often not like that, or is it case by case basis, or?
I think for me it has to be case by case, because I can watch something like Weapons, right? Be perfectly on board until it's like, oh, this is all just a magical, mystical thing happening in the background. And then I'm like, okay, I'm not interested in the horror as much now because it doesn't feel as real. But then I can go to something like Inception where it's completely grounded, but then it's just also like, oh yeah, we're going to jump through dreams twice in a row. And then I'm like, okay, I'm with it. I don't know, for me personally, what the defining marker there is. I feel like I just don't know it until I see it. Like, it's too much of a feeling for me. I don't have like a tangible scale of like, this is too much one way or the other.
Yeah. And it's interesting because Martyrs, it's like, it's so grounded, but then it starts to kind of like tantalize you with the idea of this whole scheme, right? I guess, so to speak, that Mademoiselle presents of like, yeah, oh, we have that question too. So, oh my God, are we going to actually go to are we going to go to that realm? Are we going to explore something like that? And there's a really interesting moment, which I don't even know if you can make the argument that it's doing that, but it's when it essentially zooms into Anna's eye and you see like the white orb and the light. And one of our great grad students, EJ, and she said, I think she's just looking at the reflection in the light, and that's what you see. And she also had a great point when we were asking about like, what does she tell Mademoiselle? She's like, I think she's just gaslighting her at the end. And I was like, oh, that's such a F you, like, to that character and kind of to the audience too, because we never find out what that is, right? And I don't want to know, and I think there's nothing they could tell me or personally tell the audience. I think that would merit that. I think that would lose a lot of the weight of the film if you were to explain either what it was or even what she told Mademoiselle.
It wouldn't be satisfactory, like either way.
Yeah, there's nothing you could do.
Yeah, and that ties in. We can mention it now because this ties in with what my deep thought was. And shout out EJ as well for talking, because her and I talked in the hallway about this earlier in the day. She said the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And I'm also glad that we don't know like what Anna saw afterwards. I think it's nice that it's ambiguous, kind of, just since I mentioned Inception earlier and it's on my mind. Like, if
I have not watched Inception, so don't spoil it.
I won't, but
Okay, good.
if he's back home or not, without spoiling that, we'll say that. If he's back home or not, right, at the end of that movie, you don't know, but the details and the specifics of whether he is or isn't doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, in that case. But I think something similar happens here where it doesn't matter what's on the other end. And, like, my deep thought was just to ask him, like, what we thought was there. And as I was thinking about it, Griffin and I were talking, but I think I know, like, why for you specifically you don't care with it, because I know we had talked about, like, the concept of death before at length at one time. And so, like, I know the stunts and stuff that you do is, like, I remember you said something along the lines of, like, you don't want to feel like you're limited. Like, if you can do it, why not do it? And so, to me, that's, like, a sign of, like, not fearing death. So then when the time comes for that, like, it doesn't matter what's on the other side because you're not afraid of it. Like, you don't need to know.
Yeah.
Is that accurate or no?
Yeah, I mean, oh man, this is getting really heavy. Yeah, it is complicated, right? Because it's like I don't know, like I'm just as terrified of death, I think, as anybody else. I really am jealous of people that do have a belief system. I don't have that. I do believe, and kind of one of the reasons I love this film is how it explores that ideas, and that's what they're trying to find out. But yeah, I do believe like when you're done, you're done. And that's it. And it's lights out. So in doing these things that you mentioned, like stunts, and it's more so a means of I'm still scared, but it's like confronting that very idea and not letting it like plague you. Because so many people like live their life with caution because of being scared of that idea. And I'm still scared of it, but it's just a means of being able to confront it and deal with it, I think, in a healthy way. But other people would disagree. So I like how the film gets at a lot of those questions. But yeah, what's so disgusting and sick is that they're using other people to try to answer those questions for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Griffin,
Yeah, Griffin.
what do you think about these deep topics about life?
And what do you think happens? And what do you think's going on at the end? Like, what do you think she sees? What do you think she tells Mademoiselle?
What do I think she sees? Like obviously we do get like the only thing we ever see is like a bright white light.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that could be interpreted a lot of different ways. It could just be like, as you had mentioned, someone mentioned that it was just like might have been the surgery light in the room. But like she might also be seeing like into the afterlife, whether everyone goes to the same place or not, or maybe like white is all you see and then it just snaps to black, or maybe she saw into heaven, maybe she saw into hell. It could really be anything. I think like my personal interpretation is just like she might have just been hallucinating at that point, because it's like with the amount of physical torture she was taking, it's like, would she had any straight thoughts at all? Like, would you, like, realistically, would you be seeing into the afterlife, like with the conditions you are in, and just like you like you'd have to be like actually like dying, I believe, to be able to like kind of just know. Like you'd either have to be like dead and come back, or you have to be like actively dying and just like say in your final moments like what you see, kind of. But like as we know, like Anna's kept alive, so it's like it's kind of hard to tell whether what she saw or not was real or not.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting topic, and I think I'm glad the film ends the way that it does.
Yeah.
To be able to have that kind of a conversation rather than explain it. And I know that's kind of hypocritical coming from me, because I'm somebody that constantly is like, I wish we got more explanation on X, or why was Y not explained because yada yada. And I definitely have criticisms with some of that in this movie as well. But I think for what, like, I can understand what the film was trying to do, even if it doesn't necessarily work for me, which is mainly with the parts that I don't vibe with fully.
Which are what?
Very minor complaints. But the first one is with the family that gets shot, right? Like, they're dead. And then you get maybe 15, 30 minutes after this, and then the mom's just randomly alive. And at first I thought it was like a hallucination from Anna's part. But then as it goes on, I'm like, no, she's like, oh, she's awake.
Yeah, no, you're alive.
And I don't know. It just doesn't feel right for me that she's alive, because I just watched you get a hole blown through your chest.
Well, they're not going.
Half hour beforehand, and blood drawn across the floor. Like, with as much time and blood loss has passed, there's no way you're making out of that. So I don't know if that's just me complaining for the sake of complaining or not, but that part didn't vibe. And some of them really are like minor stuff. Another one is like whenever Lucy is up in the daughter's bedroom and is trying to like get out and has to go through the window because the door's locked, even though the door locks from the inside and not the outside.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, so I don't know.
I do not.
I don't know why from that. Yeah, so I don't know what the point there was. It's just like little minor things. Like, those things don't matter as much. The one that, like, the two that really get me is with the minute when like Lucy kills herself, right?
Yeah.
Because for me, I feel like I missed something. And for the way that the story plays out with Anna being the main of the two characters, Right.
Yeah.
The more of a protagonist than the other.
Yeah, for sure. By the end of it, and special.
And I feel like for that it works, but there's such a big time gap from the start of the movie to this moment. And I feel like the relationship that's like hinted at between the two isn't fleshed out a lot. And granted, it's not probably meant to be because it's not what the focus of the film even is.
Right.
But to me, it almost felt like that would have been in a separate draft of this movie, the end point, where the majority of the movie is getting to that point. Lucy accomplishes her goal and then is still tormented and tries to end it to stop that.
Right. Yeah. And I think what's so tragic about exactly what you're referring to and why I don't even have a problem with it, but why I kind of even like it is like, yeah, we get inklings of maybe what might be more to the relationship. Yeah. There's a moment where Anna, who is the one coming to the rescue of Lucy, because Lucy is the one that breaks into this house and is essentially the one that is worse off than Anna is the one who, it's right. She's right, like, and that's kind of like the big turn is that we're led to be like, oh, she's crazy. She blew away this innocent family. But then, we kind of find out like, oh no, like they are the perpetrators. Like, I think why there's some also that weight too when, she saves the mom. It's like, oh no, like, you don't need to do that. Like, she is terrible. She's an awful person, just like you assume. But to your point about Anna and Lucy's relationship, I think what makes that so tragic is that we only get inklings of maybe what Anna really feels and how deep her affection really runs for Lucy. And this is the result of it. And this is how she's paid for it, is that she loses her best friend. She loses potentially someone she's in love with. And she gets tortured to death. Like, it is literally the worst outcome that you can have in this, I don't even want to say quasi love story, but, even if you are going to consider them friends, it can still be very much a love story. And so it's very much still a love story between Anna and Lucy, whether it's a platonic love as friends or just like if there's something more to that, right? Which, again, to your point, like we only ever get hinted at, like they never explore, they never talk about it, right? And that's so antithetical to like, and there's so many things about this that are so antithetical to like American filmmaking that and there's a remake and I've never seen the remake, nor do I really care to, right? So I don't know. I think a lot of those things that are open for interpretation, like Anna Lucy, are just, I think it makes it a little bit even more weighty and just like makes you really like kind of think about it rather than just being like, rather than explaining and then all the things happen. Like there's so many things that are said between the lines, and that are said without words that you just have to infer through like facial expressions and stuff. We just don't get in a lot of American filmmaking because we're so condescended to and patronized and saying like, you're too dumb to figure this out for yourself. So we're going to explain everything. Right. And
That one's on me. I'm smooth brain.
well, it just feels like that's how a lot of films are presented to us. Right. In an American context, a lot of people.
Yes, yeah. And with this like scene, right, where Lucy dies, feeling like in a separate draft this was the end. I also went through like a lot of drafts of the deep thought for this because tying back to what you had said earlier about like any expectations you have, just forget about it.
Yeah.
I could not anticipate anything that happens in this movie at all. Like the deep thought I was originally going to run with was, is the family actually the people that abused her? Because every time the abusers are shown in flashbacks, their faces are in the shadow.
Yeah.
So you have no idea what they actually look like.
See them.
Right. And then you come to find out that, oh yeah, they're actually just bags. And then,
and there's such a small fraction of what this thing actually is. They are just one piece of the puzzle. Like this is a whole enterprise essentially, right? Because by the end we see, what is that, 30 people that are in the house?
It's a lot of them.
Yeah.
It's a lot of rich.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and kind of going back to what we were talking about with the violence, there's another quote I wanted to pull, that I think in a lot of ways does justify the violence. And this is from an excellent book by Alex West. It's called Films of the New French Extremity, Visceral Horror and National Identity. It says, quote, acts are shown in purposeful detail, crafted to make you feel a snippet of what the characters are feeling. So you are meant to feel rage, disgust, and pain because New French Extremity are not stories of happiness, but instead ones of torment, right? And those are just not places that a lot of us humans want to go. And I think personally, there's a lot of value in that to explore those kind of deep, dark thoughts and process those things, because when you then come face to face with it in real life, you are not so kind of taken off guard. Like horrible things are going to happen to us all, whether to you or to your loved ones. Um, and I think there is a certain amount of like conditioning these films do for that. It's the classic case of like the helicopter mom, right? Who never lets her kid watch anything. And then the kid gets to grade school or high school. He's just like, what is going on in the world? Because like they had a butterfly and rainbow perspective of it, right? And granted, you shouldn't be showing your 8-year-old Martyrs, right?
Definitely not. Definitely not. No.
But I think that's also where like gateway horror comes in. And like I even have a week in the horror class where the first week is gateway horror, where we talk about like, okay, like where did we all start? Like what was the first thing we saw that really introduced us to the idea of like, oh, like I'm mortal. Like I'm not going to be here forever. And as a kid, we all kind of remember that moment or that conversation we had with our parents. And then obviously as we get older, those kind of feelings evolve. And I think this is a very grown up version of dealing with a lot of those things. And yeah, and like I said, I certainly understand why people don't want to go to that headspace. And I'm not like trying to edgelord and be like, yeah, like I love going to place, but I think there is a lot of value, and I get a lot out of having these kinds of conversations, and I think they are very therapeutic and cathartic, and I think it's more dangerous when you repress these kinds of things. But New French Extremity takes that to like the worst level imaginable, right? But I think that just posits interesting questions and fascinating conversations.
Yeah. And with what you said too about like kind of, it's not this happy sunshine and rainbow sparkle thing, and you're kind of experiencing this pain and suffering with everybody else. The last like 20 to 30 minutes is definitely the time where I felt sick. And yeah, like I said, it wasn't like I was gonna throw up, but like I felt that churning in my stomach where I was like, this is unsettling.
Right.
And it's mostly because of the way that the scenes during that time frame happen. Because somebody will show up, beat the ever-loving out of Anna, a wiping transition occurs, and then it repeats endlessly for like 20 to 30 minutes. Yeah. And I understand why it's there, because it's meant to like put you in Anna's shoes to where like you're not fully coherent because you're just repeatedly getting whopped, basically. But because I've never liked a movie, like it bothered me just a little bit because I was like, okay, we can like move on now. But like we've gotten to a lot of it, and I understand that's the point, but it's another minor complaint. It's not one that like really detracts anything from me.
Right. Because like if we're like, let's compare that to say like a more Americanized version of that, like a Saw, right? The fun in the way it's depicted in Saw is like, how am I going to get out of this? Right? Like, what would I do? Like, would I be able to find the key in time? Like, would I have the literal guts to dig through this person to find the key? And as sick as it is, like, there's fun in that, right? And because you're probably never going to be in that situation, but it's fun to have those kind of conversations with people. This is a version of that where it's not fun, where like you have a similar conversation of like, how would I feel? What would I do in those situations? But there is no notion of like entertainment, right? So like Saw, it's very entertaining. Like this, I wouldn't even consider entertaining. It's just thought provoking, right? This is a classic case of like one and done. You're going to watch it once and then you're going to kind of move on, right? Whereas Saw, like a lot of people, they are rewatches to a lot of people because there's a certain element of kitsch in those too, right? But yeah, there's a lot of fun to be had in the traps and kind of the how and why and what we do. Like you don't get any of that in this. And I think that's certainly aided by the music we talked about. Like it's not suspenseful, it's not foreboding, it's like very melancholic, it's very sad. Like it's in the moment you're just like, oh, this isn't even a horror movie. This is just like an existential dread of them. Like,
and with the music too, like I made a note in here about this as well, and you explained the same thing, but I also feel like the music doesn't really show up until the very end.
Yeah.
It's very silent for the majority of it, with like just
it's very sparse.
Yeah, where any sound like is from something that's physically there, but
it's all environmental.
Right. And then you get to the silence of it forces you to just watch it and be locked in on that moment, but then you get to the melancholy sound of it at the end with the music, and it's, like you said, doing its own complete other thing.
Yeah, right.
We're just kind of looping back. It's like with the whole ending, like it's the most like probably most defining part of the movie, and like as repetitive as it is, like that's also kind of just my minor complaint that I have. It's just like it's repetitive, and it's just like, you're watching Anna get beaten over and over again. And it's just like kind of the same thing happens. Like I get it's supposed to be like it's supposed to put you in that headspace of like this is just what she's going through daily now, and now you have to sit through it too. But it's like at the same time, it's like it feels like it goes on for a bit longer than it needs to.
Yeah.
Well then, do we have anything else we want to talk about before we get on to ratings, Mr. Britton? Mr. Griffin.
I don't believe so. No.
Alrighty, well, Drew, since it's your movie, I think it's only fair that you go first with your ratings and thoughts.
What's your rating system? Well, how does it work? Is it 5 stars? Is it 5? How about maybe 5 blenders full of the disgusting goop they get served?
We do a 5-star, but for the sake of this, we'll do 5 blenders full of goop.
All right. I give this 5 blenders full of goop. I will always give credit to a movie, and nothing makes me more excited about watching a movie than when I'm sitting there and just thinking, I have never seen anything like this before, and I have no clue where it's going. And it's hard to find that, right? Even in the sense of taking a very straightforward story and then twisting it on its head. And on top of that, this film is just asking such big questions. And I think doing it in a way that doesn't feel overly pretentious about it, right? And is doing it in a very kind of nuanced way that is really hard to do when you're tackling big subjects like this without them feeling too heady or overwrought. And it's just, I don't think there's been anything like it. And that's also part of why I love this collection of films and why I love this movement is because so many of the films elicit that kind of response of just like, I have no clue how I'm going to respond to this. And that makes it really unique. And it's something of a different ilk. Yeah.
Solid 5 blenders. Griffin, how many blenders of goop are you going for?
I'm going to give this 4.5 blenders of goop out of 5. That's correct, right? Blenders.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the real question is the 5th blender like half full or half empty?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That's the good philosophical question, and this movie definitely brought up a lot of questions for me too. But
nice transition.
Why, thank you.
How about 4.5 with a straw?
4.5. Sure, I'll take the straw. I'll take the straw. But yeah, I kind of like with the film. It's very grounded. It takes you in, like the violence. It's not like action movie violence. It's very like it's physical violence. It's emotional violence, and it's displayed very well in Martyrs. And with the whole afterlife, with like why they do the physical torture, like it's to peer into the afterlife and see what you can see. I found that concept also very interesting, just with how they displayed that and like how they're still able to keep the film like very realistic and grounded too.
Mm-hmm.
So Luke,
how many blenders of Gunji would I rate this? Would I give it? On Letterboxd, I had originally given it 3.5 blenders of goop, but then after talking, I'm going to raise that a little bit to 4 of 5 blenders of goop.
What is the soundbite you're playing? Because obviously I don't have my headphones on. Is that like applause?
It's applause and the Apple Pay sound.
Apple Pay.
Yeah, it's from Apple Pay.
Oh, I did not know that.
But yeah, I think 4 out of 5 after talking about it, because this is something that like I've been open to since I've been on campus and since I've been doing co-hosting, where every time October rolls around and I'm forced to watch these movies that guest spring on, and I have no choice but to watch them, and I'm fine with that, is that I get to appreciate them more because I have to like understand what they're doing more than I would if I chose something myself and I was just like, you know what, I liked it. But having to think, because every time, especially for October, it's always a deeper movie, like always something deeper is going on. So having those more thought-provoking conversations is amazing.
Right. And there's a reason like people chose the movies that they did too, because they know like it means something to them. It's like obviously they want to write kind of have our takes, and then explore that further.
Yeah. And, you know, even just at like a general level of filmmaking, like this movie does a lot right. We didn't even like touch on the acting that much, but the acting's phenomenal as well.
Yeah.
No complaints there. And even though I do think that like some of the story beats just don't hit with, namely just the family, like there's no way you lived that, and then like maybe a separate draft of this, Lucy dies at the end, not in like the turning point or however you want to describe that moment. But it's not enough to really like detract enough from me to dislike it. I still think this is a very great movie. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, with our ratings,
Thanks for having me.
yes, of course, it is always a pleasure to have you last. Another shout out to all of our October Halloween Spooky Time Month guests. We all appreciate you a lot.
Yeah, and shout out to my other two homies that are part of the Three from Hell.
Yeah, the Three from Hell reunion this year. Brooke and EJ back again at it. But for the time being, I'm Luke.
I'm Griffin.
I'm Drew.
And we will see you next week for not a horror movie, unless Griffin decides to pull one up.
How about that?
Spookies.
All right. Well, thank you all for watching. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.